On Christmas Eve, 1945, in the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, a devastating fire tore through the Soder family home. When the smoke cleared, 5 of their 9 children were gone. They were never seen again. This is the chilling mystery of the Soder children. What really happened on that tragic night? The fire broke out late on Christmas Eve, while George and Jenny Soder and their 9 children were asleep. The parents woke up to thick smoke and flames engulfing their home. They scrambled to safety with 4 of their children, but the other 5, Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, were trapped upstairs. Frantic, George tried to rescue them. He ran to get his ladder, but it was inexplicably missing from its usual spot. His water barrels were frozen solid, and his trucks wouldn't start. By the time the fire department arrived hours later, the house was reduced to ash and rubble. The official conclusion was that the children had perished in the blaze, but George and Jenny refused to believe it, because when investigators sifted through the debris, they found absolutely no human remains, not a single bone fragment, not a tooth. It was as if the children had simply vanished into thin air. The official story was that the fire was caused by faulty wiring, but the Soders were convinced it was arson. They remembered several strange incidents leading up to that night. A man had tried to sell them life insurance on their children and became enraged when they refused. Another stranger had warned George that his house would go up in smoke because of his outspoken criticism of Mussolini. And then there were the phone calls. Just before the fire, a woman with a strange laugh called, asking for someone who didn't live there. After the fire, more strange things happened. A bus driver claimed to have seen the children peering out of a car window as it drove by. A woman at a Charleston hotel said she saw the children with 2 men and 2 women, all of Italian descent. For years, the Soders pursued every lead. They even put up a billboard offering a reward for information, which stood for decades. In 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jenny received a mysterious envelope. Inside was a photo of a young man who bore a striking resemblance to her son Louis, with a cryptic note on the back. But the trail went cold. So what happened? Were the children kidnapped by someone with a grudge against the family, with the fire set as a diversion? Could it have been related to the local Italian mafia, as some have theorized? Or did they somehow survive the fire and were taken away to start new lives, never knowing their true identity? Despite decades of searching and countless theories, the fate of the Soder children remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Their parents went to their graves never knowing what happened to them. We're left to wonder, did they escape the flames, only to fall into a far more sinister trap? What do you think happened to the Soder children? Let me know.
In 1947, a young aspiring actress named Elizabeth Short was found brutally murdered in a Los Angeles park. Her death would soon ignite a media frenzy and become one of Hollywood's most infamous and enduring unsolved mysteries. Who killed the Black Dahlia, and why has the case captivated the public for decades? Let's dive into the chilling details. On the morning of January 15, 1947, a local resident walking her child discovered a shocking sight in a vacant lot in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. It was the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. The crime scene was both gruesome and bizarre. Her body had been meticulously posed, but perhaps the most unsettling detail was the complete lack of blood at the scene. This indicated to investigators that she had been killed elsewhere, and her body was moved and deliberately placed in the lot. This wasn't just a murder, it was a statement. The press, eager for a sensational story, nicknamed her the Black Dahlia, a name that has been etched into the annals of true crime history ever since. The Los Angeles Police Department launched one of the largest manhunts in the city's history. They interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses and chased down thousands of leads. They spoke to people who had seen Elizabeth in the days leading up to her death, trying to piece together her final movements. The investigation took an even stranger turn when a package was mailed to the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper. Inside were items belonging to Elizabeth, including her birth certificate and social security card. The sender also included a note, taunting the police and seemingly claiming responsibility for the murder. Over the years, more than 50 people have confessed to the crime, but all were eventually dismissed. Despite the massive investigation and the flood of potential suspects, every lead turned into a dead end. The case grew colder and colder, leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Who could have committed such a heinous act and then vanished without a trace? More than 70 years have passed, and the murder of the Black Dahlia remains officially unsolved. Countless books, articles, and films have explored the case, proposing numerous theories and naming various suspects, from jealous lovers to disgruntled doctors, and even famous figures of the era. Yet no one has ever been charged with the crime. The true identity of the killer has been lost to time, buried under layers of speculation and myth. What really happened to Elizabeth Short in her final, terrifying hours? And why did someone choose to end her life in such a chillingly methodical way? The truth, it seems, is still out there, waiting to be discovered. What do you think happened to the Black Dahlia? Let me know your theories in the comments.
She trusted the wrong person, and it cost her everything. This murder mystery still doesn't make sense. Would you have noticed the clue? Everyone missed the most important detail in this murder, and it was hiding in plain sight. On a quiet Tuesday night, 28-year-old Emily Carter didn't show up for her shift at the local diner. Now, that alone wasn't strange. She'd called in sick before, but when her manager called her, something bizarre happened. The phone picked up, but all he heard was silence. He called again, same thing, just an unnerving dead quiet on the other end. That's when he called the police. When they arrived at Emily's apartment the next morning, they used a master key to get inside. The scene was eerily calm. No signs of forced entry. No signs of a struggle. Emily was found in her living room, and the medical examiner initially couldn't determine the cause of death. Nothing seemed out of place, except for one tiny, insignificant detail that her sister noticed immediately. Her shoes. They were lined up perfectly by the door, a pair of worn-out sneakers and her work flats, side by side, heels to the wall. Her sister insisted Emily never did that. She was a kick-and-drop kind of person, leaving her shoes wherever they landed. To her, this wasn't just neatness. It was a sign that something was terribly wrong. It was a message. But from whom? Detectives checked her phone records, and that's when the first real clue dropped. Her phone showed one last call at exactly 11:47 p.m. the night she died. It was an incoming call. No name saved, just a number. When they traced it, the owner of the phone was a shock. It belonged to someone Emily knew, someone she trusted completely, a person she had on speed dial, but who called her that night from a burner phone. At first, this person seemed to be in the clear. They had a rock-solid alibi. Security camera footage showed them at a gas station clear across town at the supposed time of death. The timestamp was right there in the corner of the video. It seemed like a dead end. Case closed, right? But one sharp-eyed detective couldn't let it go. The shoes kept bothering him. Why would an organized killer leave such a tidy scene? So he went back to the apartment building and started talking to neighbors. An elderly woman living downstairs remembered hearing Emily's front door open and close at 11:52 p.m. 5 minutes, asterisk after asterisk. That mysterious phone call ended. And here's the chilling part that blows the whole case wide open. That detective decided to double-check the gas station's security system. He discovered that the camera system had a known glitch. The timestamp was off. It ran on a 7-minute delay. That alibi wasn't proof of innocence. It was proof of meticulous, cold-blooded planning. That call at 11:47 wasn't a conversation. It was a signal. I'm outside. The killer knew Emily would be expecting them, knew she'd open the door without hesitation. The killer was inside her apartment in under 5 minutes. To this day, we don't know what was said in those silent auto-answered calls. We don't know the exact motive or why Emily trusted someone who would betray her so completely. The killer was caught, but the why remains a mystery. So, here's my question for you. Do you think the caller acted alone, staging the scene themselves? Or was someone else already waiting inside, and the call was just the final piece of the trap? Let me know your theory in the comments. This case was almost closed in under an hour, until one quiet detail changed everything. Late on a Friday night, 34-year-old Daniel Moore left a dinner with his friends. The evening seemed perfectly normal. He drove home, and at 10:18 p.m. a final text was sent from his phone to a friend, home safe. But Daniel never was. The next morning his friends couldn't reach him. After repeated calls went unanswered, they called for a wellness check. When police arrived at Daniel's apartment, they found the front door locked from the inside. The lights were off. Nothing seemed out of place, no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. At first glance it looked like a sudden, tragic medical emergency. The scene was almost too peaceful. Then, they stepped into the kitchen. The electric stove was still warm to the touch. On one of the burners sat a small pot, burned completely dry. A thin wisp of smoke still clung to the air. The odd thing was, Daniel's friends were adamant. Daniel hated cooking. He lived on takeout and restaurant meals. Why would he be boiling something on the stove? Detectives immediately shifted their focus to the last people who saw him alive, his friends from dinner. They were all brought in for questioning, but every single one of them had a rock-solid alibi. Messages, credit card receipts, location data, and timestamps all checked out. No one had followed Daniel home. No one had a motive. The investigation hit a wall almost as soon as it began. The case stalled. Days turned into a week. Frustrated, a junior detective was reviewing the crime scene photos one last time when something caught his eye. A simple, analog clock hanging on Daniel's living room wall. Its hands were frozen at 9:42 p.m. Why did it stop? A quick check confirmed it was a battery-powered clock. The battery hadn't died. The mechanism had been damaged by a fall or a sharp jolt. 9:42 p.m. was 36 minutes * before * Daniel's final text was sent. This one detail blew the case wide open. Investigators pulled Daniel's detailed phone records. They discovered something chilling. The home safe message sent at 10:18 p.m. wasn't typed and sent in real. It was a scheduled message. Daniel had a habit of scheduling texts to let people know he'd arrived, a little quirk his close friends knew about. He never sent that text. Someone else was in the apartment, someone who knew about his habit. The scene wasn't peaceful, it was staged. The killer attacked Daniel, knocking the clock off the wall at 9:42, then used his phone to schedule the home safe message to create a false timeline. They then locked the door from the inside and slipped out, leaving a perfectly constructed puzzle. So here's the question that remains: who had access to Daniel's phone, knew his password, and was familiar with his unusual habit of scheduling texts? Who was close enough to get into his apartment and smart enough to try to build the perfect alibi? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more mysteries.
One single sentence solved this case, and for the longest time, absolutely no one noticed it. When 41-year-old Mark Lewis was found unresponsive in his home, the initial police assessment was a tragic but straightforward accident. The scene seemed to support this theory perfectly. The doors and windows were all securely locked from the inside. There were no signs of a break-in, no damage to the property, and nothing of value appeared to be missing. It looked like a closed book. During the routine investigation, a close friend of Mark's came forward with a crucial piece of information. He told police he had spoken to Mark late on the night he died. He described their conversation, saying Mark sounded tired, but otherwise perfectly fine. This phone call immediately became the anchor for the entire timeline of events. It established the last known moment Mark was alive and well, helping police narrow down the window of time for his death. Case closed, right? Not quite. As investigators continued to process the scene, they discovered something that didn't add up. They found Mark's phone, and its battery was completely dead. A closer look at the phone's records confirmed it had powered down hours before the supposed phone call with his friend was meant to have taken place. The logs showed no outgoing or incoming calls during that period. The phone was off. At first, police tried to rationalize it. It was a small discrepancy, easily explained. Maybe Mark had let his phone die, then charged it just long enough to make that one final call before it died again. It was a plausible theory, one that would keep their timeline intact. So they decided to check the phone charger in his room to see if it had been recently used. And that's when the whole case blew wide open. The charger was sitting on his nightstand, still in its original packaging. The plastic wrap was untouched, the twist tie still neatly coiled around the cord. It had never been used. This wasn't just a minor inconsistency anymore, it was proof. The phone call that the entire investigation was built upon, the one that established the timeline and painted a picture of Mark's final hours, never happened. The timeline wasn't just mistaken. It was a complete fabrication. A single, seemingly insignificant lie from the friend transformed what everyone thought was a quiet, accidental death into a meticulously planned crime. The friend hadn't just misremembered a detail, he had invented a reality to cover his tracks. So it makes you wonder, why would someone go to such lengths to lie about a phone call that never even existed? Think about that. Thanks for watching.